Sam, I want to get into this mock draft if I could, okay?
All right, let's do it.
Because, look, I can do a mock draft every day.
Why
and
not?
I like getting mock drafts from reputable people.
Sure.
People who are in the know a little bit more than you and I. So the 33rd team, their scouting department, did this latest mock draft. They have 4 quarterbacks going in the top 9 picks of this draft. Here's the top 5. Bryce Young. Will Levis goes number 2 to Houston. Jalen Carter 3 to Arizona. Will Anderson 4 to Chicago. And here's where it gets interesting. Seattle, Pete Carroll says we're going to improve our defense. Seattle takes Tyree Wilson, the edge from Texas Tech. You know who that leaves at number 6? C.J. Stroud, okay? That leaves the Lions at 6 with an option. C.J. Stroud or trade. And the 33rd team projects the Detroit Lions to trade out of that pick. How many times do we say trade back,
yes,
trade back,
yes.
trade back? Well, this particular mock draft has the Lions trading out of that pick. They have the Lions trading with Tennessee, moving back to 11 and gaining Tennessee's second-round pick. So the Lions move from 6 to 11 and gain another second-round pick, so they'd have 3 second-round picks. And with that 6th pick, the Tennessee Titans select C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State. With the 11th pick, the Lions select Christian Gonzalez, cornerback, Oregon. Let's just start there. If the Lions are faced with C.J. Stroud at 6 and they trade out of that selection, I'm curious to know what Lions fans would say about that, because we're going to talk about Daniel Jones in a little bit. We're going to talk about Daniel Jones wanting $45 million. Are you prepared to pay Jared Goff, when he's up in 2 years, $40 to $45 million? Because if you are not prepared to do that, I don't care how many picks you're getting. If you like that quarterback at 6, be it C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson, if you like either one of those guys and you pass on those quarterbacks, and then all of a sudden they turn into something, and 2 years from now Jared Goff says, okay, here's my turn, $45 million.
Yeah.
What do you do, Sam?
That's a conundrum, because C.J. Stroud, he's one that obviously a lot of people would not expect to fall to 6. I think that he's the second best quarterback prospect coming out of the draft. And I know you and I, Ryan, a lot of our closest looks at C.J. Stroud have been in some of his more unimpressive showings, like this year when they played Michigan at home and C.J. Stroud only led them to 23 points. That being said, he looked pretty damn good against Georgia in that game. He led the game-winning field goal drive. It's just the kicker shanked the field goal. So CJ, that's a tough one. Obviously, Jared Goff is under contract for the next couple of years, and I think you can build a roster around him that can win you games, that can win you playoff games, that can win divisions, that could maybe even get you to a Super Bowl and maybe even a Super Bowl win, although that's a little bit of a stretch. But if CJ Stroud is there, it wouldn't break my heart if they took him. I wouldn't be pounding the table. But I also would be it would seem a little off-brand for a Brad Holmes. I think if C.J. Stroud falls, you might have the opportunity to get the best of both worlds, because obviously C.J. Stroud, if you pick him and he hits, that's obviously awesome. You got your quarterback of the future. But if you can trade back and get a guy like Christian Gonzalez at 11, who a lot of mocks have him going to the Lions at 6, if you can get him at 11 plus get another second round, you can further sort of supplement this roster and solidify this defense and solidify it to where it's a defense where the Lions can win the division and make some noise in the playoffs. So I don't know if I have really I like both options no matter what. I hope he falls. I think you can.
Well, that
win
would
with
put
either.
the Lions in the best situation, right? Either they're going to evaluate this player, C.J. Stroud, and they're going to take him, or, hell, they might even like Anthony Richardson more than Stroud. Wherever their player evaluation staff comes down on, whoever they come down on, if that quarterback is there and they've evaluated him and they want him, they'll take him. If they don't like either quarterback, That is a perfect spot for the Lions to trade out of that pick then. If Stroud falls out of the top 5, and one of these 3 guys, whether it be Bryce Young or Will Levis or C.J. Stroud, if one of those 3 quarterbacks falls to the Lions at 6, well, you're in a really good spot. That could be the best case scenario for this football team because you're either going to take the player or you're going to trade out of that pick.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you want. And honestly, I'm more of the camp, and we'll get to them more later, that only if it's Stroud or Bryce Young. I don't want to touch Anthony Richardson or Will Levis with a 10-foot pole right now because I think they have too many question marks. But at least with C.J. Stroud, he was a Heisman finalist 2 years in a row. He is arguably, by the numbers, the best quarterback in Ohio State history. You can argue Justin Fields, you can argue C.J. Stroud, but he is an NFL-level quarterback, and I think that he can project well to the NFL. There's obviously some knocks on him, like he played with some of the best receivers like Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Emeka Egbuka. You could go on and on and on. Just an excellent group of wide receivers. And Ryan Day, say what you want about him, but the quarterback play really improved when he became their head coach. Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud were quarterbacks under his tutelage, and I think that he might have been in the perfect situation. But that's the beauty of it all. There's the flexibility. Christian Gonzalez at 11. At 6, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know about that, but I think he could be the best cornerback in the draft. He's not necessarily my favorite, but I like a lot about him. He's a big corner. He's athletic. He's got speed. He's a guy that I think could possibly shut down half the field. And a corner, unlike quarterback right now, is a need right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into next season, with all due respect to these players, because they both had flashes. I don't want Jerry Jacobs and Jeff Okudah to be the starting bookend corners.
And they won't be.
They won't be. I think that would be, I don't want to say disaster.
Irresponsible.
It'd be irresponsible. It would be a hindrance to the plan to solidify the defense. So Christian Gonzalez at 11, I don't hate it. But if C.J. Stroud's there and they take him, I also don't hate that either. I would probably lean towards trading back and going with the corner, but that's just because Jared Goff, whether you like him or not, he's still under contract for 2 years. We don't have to have those discussions yet. You just have to wonder if you can put together a roster that he can win with in the next couple of years. You'd have a window, but with windows comes expectations, and if you don't win in that window, there's a lot of regret.
Let me bring you guys into this. The phone number, 313-552-6322. 313-552-6322. Isn't this the best possible scenario for the Lions here at 6? Because either one of those 3 quarterbacks, again, Bryce Young, Will Levis, or C.J. Stroud, are going to fall to them at 6. So you can either take them or trade out of that selection. And according to the mock draft that we are following right now, the one that came out today, mock draft 3.2 from the 33rd team, they have the Lions trading with Tennessee, moving back to 11 and taking the cornerback from Oregon in Christian Gonzalez. And Tennessee gets the quarterback. Here's what I will say about it, though, too, Sam, is I trust Brad Holmes and his analysis and his evaluation of all of these guys. I don't know what he's going to do in free agency. He has not made a splash in free agency yet as Lions general manager. But the one thing we have seen from Brad Holmes and all of these guys in the scouting department is that they know how to evaluate collegiate talent. So if he says, I'm going to pass on C.J. Stroud, I'm going to pass on Anthony Richardson, I think I'm at the point where I will trust that evaluation because he's proven that. His track record shows he knows how to evaluate a player. And I'm not as strong in my belief system on who the Lions should take because Brad Holmes knows a whole hell of a lot more about these guys than I do, and I would just trust what he does. If he wants to take CJ and stash him for a year or 2 years, I'm fine with that. Hell, if he likes Anthony Richardson better than CJ Stroud, wanted to take him at 6, I would trust his evaluation on that. And conversely, if he wanted to trade back and take Christian Gonzalez, I would trust his evaluation on that as well. with the Daniel Jones, and again, we can talk about that later on in the show, with the Daniel Jones coming out and saying he wants $45 million a year, you do have to look ahead and project, is Jared Goff going to want that kind of money 2 years from now, or a renegotiation after next year? Are you prepared to do that when you've got guys like Amon-Ra and Sewell and all these guys coming up? And the bill is due on those guys eventually, pretty soon. And I'm not sure you can build a team and pay Jared Goff $45 million a year, which might be the going rate.
I mean, honestly, if Daniel Jones gets $45 million, obviously we don't know if he's going to get it or not. He's asking for it. Then Jared Goff is most certainly going to ask for $45 million, depending on how the next couple of years shake out. Jared Goff's going to be looking at his agent and being like, that guy over there in New York, he's got $45 million. I'm worth more than that. And that's what's the sort of conundrum here, because when you're talking about Christian Gonzalez versus a quarterback or Brad Holmes, you're talking about whether you want to draft and stash and sort of have your future more lined up the way you want, but maybe not be as good in the next couple of years, or do you want to build that roster right now and put together a roster that is similar to a 2018 Rams in which Jared Goff actually was the quarterback of a team that went to the Super Bowl? But the good news is, like you said, with Brad Holmes, the one thing all of us Lions fans, or almost all of us Lions fans, agree on is that he has knocked these first two drafts out of the park. Mm-hmm. I mean, in 2021, you get Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the fourth round, by the way. They both blossomed into stars. And then last year, Aiden Hutchinson obviously leads all rookies in sacks. And then you got James Houston and Malcolm Rodriguez as sixth rounders, and Kirby Joseph in the third round. I'm just glad that we can have these conversations, which are interesting because we want to see the Lions do well with a GM that we trust, who has proven, at least in the draft, he's been exemplary. I wouldn't even say competent. I would say exemplary. When's the last time we've been able to say that about a Lions team? Never.
Without question. I couldn't agree with you more. 313-552-6322. Let's go to the phone lines now. Bring in Charles. Charles, you're on WoodwardSports.com. How you doing, my friend?
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing good, bud. Thanks for the call. What do you got?
I think they should definitely trade the sixth pick if Jalen Carter isn't available, or a quarterback. Because, like Sam said, you want to get picks for the future, like 2024 draft. You want to keep this thing going, because next year you got to figure the Lions are probably going to be picking in the 20s in the first round.
How do you feel about the quarterback position? Because I've kind of always maintained that I feel like this is the last best chance the Lions have to take a high first round quarterback. Now, I'll leave Brad Holmes' evaluation up to that, but I feel like this is the last best shot at it. What do you think about the quarterback position? You prepared to pay Jared Goff $45 million?
I don't know if I would pay him $45 million, but you definitely need an insurance policy behind him.
Yeah. I think they'll take a quarterback. I just don't know where. Hey, Charles, thanks so much for the call, bud. Call back anytime, all right?
All right, thank you. You guys do a great job.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Charles. 313-552-6322. I am a little weary of the fact that this quarterback situation is getting so out of hand. And because of that, look at all these players that are going to get cut around the league. I mean, we just talked to Jeff Risdon last week about all of these really good players around the league. I mean, there's salary cap casualties every year. But when you're paying these quarterbacks that amount of money, and I know the cap keeps going up, but, man, at some point, it's going to be hard to field a team.
I mean, that's what the NFL kind of wants, though, right? Parity. They don't want teams that can just dominate year after year after year. And speaking of teams that might end up being in that conundrum in the next year or two, and I know we'll get to them later, the team that represented the NFC in the Super Bowl, their window might be quite a bit. It might be shorter than you think, just with all they have on free agency. But that's kind of your point, that if you want to pay your quarterback, it's going to be really damn hard, unless you're great at drafting, to build and maintain a roster around them that can win. Unless, of course, you're an alien like a Patrick Mahomes. But even relative to the market, his contract is more team-friendly than you think as well. So it's the NFL we live in. It's a salary cap league with quarterbacks making astronomical amount of money. Daniel Jones? Come on.